Hello, hello. Welcome back to Peak Northwest, an outdoors and travel podcast by the Oregonian and OregonLive, dedicated to the adventure and exploration of our beautiful Pacific Northwest. I'm Jamie Hale.
And I'm Vicki Connor. Together, we take you to some of the most beautiful and interesting destinations in our region, discussing where to go, what to do, and places to see. And today, we're headed to the top of Mount Shasta, one of the highest peaks in the Cascade Mountains.
Yeah, Vicki, here on Peak Northwest, we've naturally talked about a lot of Northwest peaks. But Mount Shasta is one that we haven't ever really discussed. I think part of that reason is probably just because it's in, California. But it's a mountain that really shouldn't be overlooked. While it's a bit farther from Portland than say like Mount Hood or even Mount Rainier, the mountain is truly enormous. I believe it's only like a few hundred feet shorter than Mount Rainier.
Yep. And Jamie, I don't think you've summited Mount Shasta, and I have not either.
No.
So here to tell us all about his recent climb to the top of Mount Shasta is our colleague, Fedor Zarkhin, breaking news and enterprise reporter here at the Oregonian. Fedor, welcome on.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.
So Fedor, what can you tell us about Mount Shasta, and when did you decide that you wanted to summit it?
So Mount Shasta is big and beautiful and far away from Portland, but it is worth the drive and the effort. For a lot of folks, it takes more than one attempt to summit it. It's a tough mountain. It can be incredibly windy. People can get hit with altitude sickness. Any number of things can happen, but it's a really kind of astounding place to be. And I think the mountain is a good mix of, like, it's not technical. You don't need to be roped up. You don't need to rock climb or anything like that. You don't need to know how to cross a glacier and rescue yourself from if you fall into a crevasse. You don't need those things, but it's varied enough and complicated enough that it's not just a straight slog all the way up. So for me, this summer, I kind of got back into climbing mountains a little bit. So 2016, I climbed Hood for the first time, and that was successful. Got to the top, but it was a little bit. So I went there with a friend, and then something happened with him at the beginning of the climb, and like he was like, I'm gonna go back, but you should go. You can keep going, And I had a bit of that summit fever. Like, well, he says I should go, I'll go. But then that was not a good idea. Like when I came back down, like, I'm not even going to go into the details, but basically, like, I knew I should have stayed, but I didn't. And then as I was coming back, I was like, man, this is probably not going to be good. And I was right. And that really kind of turned me off any sort of mountain climbing that was remotely challenging, right? Like, sure, Mount St. Helens, okay. South Sister, okay. But that's just a slog. You're just walking. That experience with Hood, I just didn't really trust myself quite as much. Just didn't feel like I was the most reliable climbing partner. But then this summer, I mean, it's been a while. That's like 8 years. So this summer, I think it was like Friday at like 5 or 6 p.m. And I was like, what am I doing this weekend? Like, I don't know. What am I doing this weekend? I'd sort of done some backpacking here and there, getting back into that. And then I was like, you know what? I'm going to climb Mount Hood. That's what I want to do. So clearly I learned a lot in the 8 years, I'm responsible. And so 5 p.m. I made that plan, raced the next adventure, rented the crampons, rented the this, that, and the other, took lay down for 45 minutes, 20 minutes of those I was asleep, and drove out to Mount Hood and, by myself, almost immediately found a little group to climb with and summited that. And I was like, okay, this is good. This works. So I did that climb. I think that was late May. And then I was looking for like the next little adventure. And I joined this Facebook mountaineering group, North Pacific Northwest Mountaineering. And some guy was like, hey, I'm summiting Shasta this weekend. Does anyone want to go with me? Like, yes, I want to go with you. Messaged him, got on the phone, and was I was trying to suss him out. Who is this person? Just, you never know who's on the internet. You don't know if they're like a dog or if they're like a real person. And I kind of wanted it to be an opportunity when I got on the phone with him for him to like almost like interview me in a sense, like to see if he wanted me to go with him. He didn't really ask me any sort of questions like that, like how much I could bench press and whatever, which he maybe should have, because I think he knows like to the third decimal what he can bench press, you know. But so yeah, we just coordinated, and this guy's a lot more experienced than me, like a lot more, and we met up Friday after work, drove the 6 or whatever hours, camped at the trailhead of Mount Shasta, skinned up to base camp Helen Lake on Saturday, and then walked up to the summit Sunday, and then came back down. Skinning is where you are on skis, but you have these like this material that you glue to the bottom of the skis so that if you're at an angle, you're not sliding back. So it's basically like hiking on skis.
So you went up with this guy. He's got way more experience than you. You said, were you feeling like nervous at all, or were you just kind of like in it, ready to go?
Um, Thing is, like, my style is like I will do things that are 100% outside of my uh like physical, like the range of what my activity that I should do. Like I will definitely do things like way beyond that, like things that are a lot harder, because like what I enjoy is like the struggle, like you're there on the slope, it's like, oh my god, I can't do this. One step, two step, three step, like going slow, but just like you just keep on going and going. Like I really do enjoy that in particular. So I was excited to be learning a lot of stuff. Like, for example, when we were preparing, he was telling me he was bringing a shovel. I was like, oh, that's cool. I guess we'll have one shovel. He's like, no, you have to have a shovel. I'm like, what? Turns out, like, you have to have a shovel, in case you need to dig someone out if there's an avalanche, in case a storm comes in suddenly, you need to build a shelter out of the snow. The way he was talking about it was like, no, like, this is not an optional thing. Like you're going up Mount Shasta, you're bringing a shovel, period. Which previously I didn't even really consider that. I was also excited to test out some new equipment. That whole REI sale thing. It'll get you, man. REI's sales. Oof! I got this amazing MSR stove, a liquid fuel stove, which I'd never had before. With these stoves, the liquid stoves, like you actually create the pressure yourself by pumping this, like a pump. And so that means that you can like adjust to the elevation, and, and it's like a solid stove. Like it requires, there's a whole process to it. You got to prime it. You got to this, you got to that. It's not just plug and play, but once it's going, it feels like you could use it like on the moon or like in Antarctica and you'd be fine, But anyway, so I took that. Yeah, so I was definitely pumped. I was also just curious about like who this guy is. We clearly had like very different personalities, just a lot was different. But I felt like I was learning from him. He had a ton of extra equipment, which was super helpful. Um, but on Saturday, day one, when we were skinning up, it was clear, okay, like this guy's, he's moving ahead. Sunday, okay, so we camped at a place called Helen Lake. We found a little spot, used our shovels to like make the area flat. He brought two bivy sacks for us, so we actually just slept like under the stars. Put like basically a big sack. Inside of it, you put your inflatable pad, sleeping bag, and you crawl in, and like your eyes and face are like looking at at the sky. And this guy, this time around, he was really serious about summiting, because he tried twice before. The first time the weather turned real bad, he had to turn around. The second time last year, he got altitude sickness, so he had to go down. This time he told me he stopped drinking coffee a week before the summit. He was taking the Diamox pills. He was getting a lot of sleep. He was just like, he was really set on actually on summiting this time around. So when we got to our campsite, like our base camp, essentially, not at the trailhead, but at the base camp. He took some Benadryl, put on his little face mask, and it was like, I mean, it was still light out, and he was out.
What route did you take and how did you choose that route?
South route, the standard route. So, in all of these, I'm very much a beginner. So the south route is the it's the same on like Mount Adams. It's the south route, Hood south route, Shasta south route. I don't know the actual geological science behind this, but it would make sense if the sun is going to be mostly on the south side. So presumably that's where there's a lot more weathering. So presumably the conditions are a little bit kinder on the south side of any mountain here in the northern hemisphere. I mean, I don't know what else would explain the fact that, yeah, it's like Hood, Adams, and Shasta. All climb, they're climbed on the side. I've been meaning to Google this for several months now, for a month, but I haven't quite gotten around to it.
So what did it look like when you were climbing up that south side of the mountain? I know you mentioned this expedition. I mean, what was the paint us a scene here? What you were facing?
So Saturday was like the more leisurely day, relatively speaking. For the first hour, you're carrying your skis because there's not enough snow yet. Just going through a trail. There's a bunch of Californians, Bay Area folks. Are way less nice, by the way, than folks you encounter on Mount Hood. Like, for real, like, really. It's just like the energy from people is much more like, man, we're climbing a mountain, as opposed to like, hey, blah. So that's Saturday, and you're skinning up, and it's hard. It's snow, but there's the sun's out, and it's just like a hard hike up a bunch of snow. Sunday is where it gets a little bit more hairy. So we set out at like 3 a.m. and it was completely foggy everywhere. Like, you couldn't see anything. You got your headlamps on. So you kind of get up, and like by around that time, 3 a.m., other people are starting to ascend as well. So like to your left, like through the fog, you see these lines of people. It's sort of like watching like a documentary about Everest or something, just like people trudging along in the dark going up. And so at our camp, we left our bivy sacks and all the stuff that we didn't need to take with us, like sleeping bags and so forth. We left all that at the campsite, put on our crampons, grabbed our ice axes, and started just trudging along step by step. So Sunday, like the first step, it was just like the steepest and hardest stuff was definitely Sunday. So it's like you wake up and you're immediately going up like the worst possible stepmaster machine that like known to humankind. And my bro here just gone. Like, I swear to God. It was like, I think I saw him for like 3 minutes and he was gone. And I didn't see him again until we met up again at the parking lot later that afternoon, which, yeah, I'm not even kidding. It was pretty ridiculous. So the first chunk of that day, I mean, it was quite hard for me, and I very quickly had to like resort to kind of like a mental system where I take 5 steps, take a break, take 5 steps, take a break, take 5 steps, take a break. And, and I would play around with it. Like, okay, so how many can I do without like losing my breath? The most important thing at that point to me is like getting a rhythm. Like, if you push a little harder than you can go, you're just going to get gassed out, and it's going to tire you out mentally, I think. If you go too slow, it can make you start feeling impatient, so you've got to just like find that right rhythm depending on, how steep things are. So at that point, I mean, really it's like, it's a really cold and windy. There's these snow steps kind of whacked into the snow. Somewhere behind you, there's folks who are maybe catching up with you. Farther ahead, there's people, but everybody's coming in and out of the fog, out of the clouds. You can't really, there's no view to speak of. You can't see the top of what you're climbing to because there's multiple like false summits. It's like you get to a thing, then you got to go sideways, then you climb somewhere. So like you don't see anything, and you're just going like 2, 3, 4. You're snacking the whole time. Like, my approach this time was I had a little bag of gummies that I would just take like a gummy and park it between my cheek and my gum, for the sugar to melt, because like you want quick sugar to process you. And also like that gave me kind of like a time marker. It's like I put one in there and it melts and it helps me measure time. Like that to me mentally was the most important thing, like finding some way to measure time, like again, like with those 5 steps break, 5 steps break, So, um, but then like any sort of maneuver, like taking off your gloves, putting on gloves, changing any sort of the gear you're wearing is like an operation. Like you have to get off of the main line of people climbing. You have to like whack in these steps into the snow with your boot crampons to make sure you're stable, because you don't want to fall, because if you fall, it's bad. And then you got to take off your backpack and you have to balance it just right so that things don't fall off, and then like your hands start getting cold if you take off your gloves. And then so any sort of like thing that you do, like it just takes a lot more work, so you have to like think about what you're doing. Now also this whole time, so I also decided to take the Diamox, those pills for altitude sickness, but I forgot them in the car, so I wasn't
Oh,
So
no.
one of the symptoms of altitude sickness is like making dumb decisions, basically. So I was trying to be smart. I was like, okay, I was trying to constantly, there's like a constant voice in my head that was like assessing the decisions I was making and asking myself like, okay, was that a dumb decision? Because if it was a dumb decision, what if you have altitude sickness? What if you're doing like something irrational? So by the time I finished that first like real hard push, and got to what's called the red banks, like there's a flat area there, and you have to go west some, like cross some like glaciery type stuff. It's just like there's actual like variety of view there. I'd run out of water, so I had almost 3 liters of water, and I had none left by that point. And there's still a lot of climbing to do. And it was this perfectly flat spot where I could have set things up to to melt some water, but for whatever reason, I just don't feel, I just don't want to take off my backpack, set everything up, I'm just going to keep going. So then I get to the next part where there's like a steep climb. And as I'm climbing, I'm like, that was pretty dumb. Do I have altitude sickness? You know? so, so, because it was obvious. I mean, like, I'm going to need water. Like, I cannot finish this thing without more water. And again, it's still all cloudy and like you can't see a thing. It's like some surrealist. Uh, I feel like it could be like some 20th mid 20th century French allegory of existence. With like people coming and going and like everything being a trudging meaninglessness.
Mhm.
Anyways, so as I start worrying about my mental state, I'm like, okay, Fedor, like I promise you, next time you are able to, you're going to stop and you're going to melt some water. Trudging up, trudging up, trudging up, and lo and behold, I find like a rocky patch, because a rocky patch that's relatively flat. I can actually stop there and take my backpack off, and so like I get into action. I take out that stove I was telling you about, and set up the reflective thing to collect the heat, get the shovel out and get some snow. The snow was so hard up there that like if I didn't have the shovel, I wouldn't have been able to knock any of it off of the slope and melt it. Like there's no way I would have done that with my hands. And like just as soon as I got like really into this process, it was so satisfying because like, I had zero water. I'm at like, I don't know, 10,000 feet, 11,000 feet up on this mountain. My dude's like, I don't know where, and I have like no, it's like, it's a bad situation. It's not great. Like, yes, of course people would like help you out if you're like, you're not on like Mount Everest where people would be like, sorry, buddy, we also paid a bunch of money to be here. It's like people will help you out, but you're not really, they're also from the Bay Area, so they're not really that friendly. As I said, they don't really, they might actually not help. Anyways, so it was so satisfying to get this thing working, and then water starting to melt, and I get out the water filter and I'm pumping it into Camelback, and I'm sitting there like completely like hyper focused on this stove and the water melting for like 30 minutes. I'm just like all that exists is this thing, in this fog and clouds. And then like at some point I look up, I'm looking down towards, the slope that I'd come from. And in the time that I was completely focused, for the first time that morning, all of the clouds had cleared. And suddenly I could just see like all of California, like rocky cliffs, like wisps of clouds still like somewhere to my left, like blue sky over there, like the brilliant snow reflecting everything. And I was just like, I am the happiest I've ever been or ever will be. This is amazing. This is amazing. Yes, this is what I want. That's why I'm here. This is,
Wow.
I mean, it was, yeah, that just like that. There's like the satisfaction of kind of being able to save your own butt, with like, plus just the sudden clearing, just the sudden, like I'm just like sitting there and I look up and it's all like this view, this scene.
Wow.
So from there, that I was able to do that at the bottom of what is called Misery Hill. That's one of the, it's one of, yeah.
Come on.
No, I'm serious. And the reason it's called Misery Hill is because like you've been climbing so much, you're so tired, and you've still got this thing that is still, so steep to climb. So that was, I mean, by that point, I think I was just like very, again, like what I enjoy about this whole thing is like the mental process, more than anything. And I think that like the water bit like really gave me a lot of oomph mentally. So, got through that. People are coming down and I'm saying, just chatting with random folks. And then soon after you get through Misery Hill, and like it is miserable, like believe me, I'm not just like, oh, you know, bouncing up. Like it's still like step, 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 rest, step, 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 rest. Get to basically essentially a flat area where you can see views to the left, to the north and to the south, and where you see the very last summit push, like this craggy, rocky, icy rise, which is where like the actual summit is. And you can just drop your backpack in this area where a bunch of other climbers are hanging out, and then cross what is essentially, it's not a plateau, but it's essentially like you're at the summit area and you just got to cross some flat space to get to the actual like summit proper. Um, and and that's, it's pretty tight there. There's not that much space, and on the actual summit there's like a bunch of people and you want to be careful maneuvering around them. People are taking turns standing on the actual summit, and there's skiers there. Watch some guys skiing from like the summit down, which was brave. I still haven't seen my dude. Where's this guy? Like whatever. Well, he went off. We did have little radios with us that we just weren't using for whatever reason. And at this point, I'm thinking like, maybe I should try to connect with him. Go on the radio. It's like, hey, this is Fedor. Where you at? No response. I start climbing down a little bit, and then I do get a response from him. He's like, whoa, like, I'm at the base camp. And so essentially what we think happened is that while I was cooking up water, he was coming down and he missed me because he said he was looking to see people, if they were me, but he didn't see me, so he figured I just turned around. Like he said later that at some point he saw me doing the thing of like taking 5 steps and taking a break. And he was like, oh boy, oh no. Like, so he basically figured I would just turn around, because it was like, because he was just like skittering up to the top. But what he didn't know was that was, the pain is the point, So the pain is the point. I love it. Okay. So then coming down was easier than going up. And I got down at base camp, packed up all the stuff, got on the skis, and skied down to by this point, I'm like genuinely exhausted, and like I've got some weird mix of like euphoria and exhaustion. And one thing I really enjoy is like skiing in between the trees. And so I got up to a spot like when I was already like much closer to the trailhead, there's a lot of trees and there's snow, and at some point the snow starts to like melt off, where it's you have to find the paths where the snow doesn't stop and you don't have to like pick up your skis and walk around. And I was just like having such a great time that I was just like, oh, it's like the trailhead's like in that direction for sure, like it's over there. And then at some point where the snow got like rare enough that I was like, okay, I'm gonna check where I'm actually at on my phone GPS, and I saw that I was like not where I was supposed to be, and I was like, oh my god, what am I doing with it? What? And I got a little bit worried, I got like, God, am I gonna have to tell this guy that he's gonna have to like pick me up here, there, whatever? It was just a little more like of that type 2 enjoyment that I created for myself. So then I started walking east back towards like what looked like a trail, and I'm just like, I started carrying my skis because there wasn't enough snow, and I'm like, oh my god, am I gonna like, are there bears? Are there coyotes? Like, what's gonna happen to me? And then suddenly I see just like some random guy walking on the trail, and I'm like, brother, where am I? You're like, what, dude? What? Excuse me? Please stay away. It was. So it turned out it was all not so bad. Got back to the trailhead, was alive. Everybody was alive, and then we, got some food, drove back to Portland, and at some point we stopped at a rest area on the way back, and I went back to the parking lot from the bathroom to see this dude up against the picnic table doing push-ups.
Come on.
That's exactly what I said. That is exactly what I said. Or I said something like that. I was like, that is totally unnecessary, bro. Something to that effect.
Wow, so, this guy.
Yeah.
Well, if anything, that is an incredible story. I'm a little shook to my core after hearing this.
Oh my god.
Wow. So, Fedor, is this your main summit? Like, do you have more plans to do other crazy type 2 adventures this summer?
Well, let's see. So I went up Mount Adams last weekend. So like not the weekend that just passed, but the weekend before that. And in terms of future adventures, like especially I think after this Adams climb, I think I did on the other climbs as well, but especially after this Adams climb, like I really felt just like, or maybe I just recognized it better. I don't know. It felt so good being up there, like all the important things are clear. Like the important things are like you walk up, you have water, you have food, you make sure everyone you're with is taken care of, and you're taking care of yourself, and you put on sunscreen, and like your measurement of your own like worth and success is based on like how rational you are, as in like you're not deluding yourself and you're not making dumb decisions out of vanity, and like you're just like your strength and perseverance, like, and that's it. That is it. It's not how much money you make. It's not whether you got a good grade in in like some class, or just none of it matters. And the reward for that, for putting that effort in, for really focusing on what matters, the reward for that is just like you might as well be on the moon. Like you are in awe. Like I mean, it's a cliche, but you really are in awe of like the grandeur. Like that really is the one word that I've been able to think of since then to kind of describe it. Is just like the grandeur of like, this is real. Like this is planet Earth. Like how did I, like, this is unbelievable. I mean, it feels like almost holy, so I definitely would like to do more. I mean, it is like a shrine, it is like people walk up these things, and to me it's like they're doing pilgrimages of some sort to like something or somebody else. And the one thing about it is like when you come back from those trips, especially if it's like a 2-day trip or something, you start wondering like, when I was a kid, I wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to be a pirate. Like, whatever happened to that? And then you start like, maybe I could still be a pirate. You just like, you kind of just like, kind of brings you back to yourself a little bit. So yeah, yeah.
I love how the volcanoes can help put things in perspective. Well, Fedor, you know, any final parting wisdoms for anyone who may be listening to this and maybe thinking like, hey, I want to go do an expedition up the side of Mount Shasta. Any advice for them?
So one is, I mean, don't start with Shasta. It's pretty tough if you want to actually summit. Number two is don't have like a summit mindset. I am really lucky that at the end, and my people are very lucky that at the end of the day, back 8 years ago, things turned out okay in the end, but they might have not. So like, just like really don't learn the hard way that the like a summit fever mindset is just vanity, and is just not it's driven by the wrong motivations and could have consequences. And and realize that it's actually not that hard to find people to climb with if you don't have people immediately in your life who want to do that. Like with Mount Hood and with with Mount Hood, for example, again, like within 5 minutes of starting the trail, I was walking a little bit in the wrong direction, and there was a small group, and I was like, "Hey guys, is this the right way?" Like, no, it's this way, but you can come with us if you want. Like, just come climb with us. And then I ended up climbing with them again. Several weeks later. They're very good people. So not be too intimidated by it, and just the pain is the point. Yeah, pain is the point. Pain is the point.
Well, Fedor, thank you so much for coming on to tell us all about this. It sounds like a great adventure. Looking forward to hearing more adventures from you in the future.
Thank you very much for having me on.
So, Vicky, got to ask you, Mount Shasta, is this on your list? Are you enticed?
Probably not anytime soon. How about you, Jamie?
I think you know the answer to that question.
Yeah. It sounds like an incredible time, and especially to have something, just those moments that Fedor described on the side of this mountain, just looking up and taking everything in. Like, I imagine that will stay with him forever. So, kudos to him. I don't know that I will personally do it though.
I would like to go closer to Shasta. I've seen it from Southern Oregon. Looked at some great views from like the Klamath Basin. It's a beautiful, beautiful mountain. Again, so big, so tall, so gorgeous. I would love to maybe get up there a little bit closer, at least.
For sure.
Someday soon, hopefully.
Yes.
Well, folks, that will do it for us for today. Until next time, you can watch our videos on the Oregonian's YouTube channel and view all of our travel and outdoors coverage on OregonLive.com/travel, as well as hereisoregon.com.
Please leave us a rating or review if you enjoy the show. And if you want to support this podcast, as well as our local journalism, please consider a subscription to Oregon Live. You can find details at OregonLive.com/pod support. Also, if you're a fan of the show and you're interested in potentially sponsoring it, you can get in touch with our marketing people at advertise@Oregonian.com. This episode of the show is produced by me, Vicky Connor, alongside Jamie Hale.
Stay safe and happy travels, everyone. Until next time, we leave you with this 10 seconds of Zen.